Let's start with Chase Claypool because to me, they're already missing Juju. James Washington made a nice play last night. He did. But it was sort of a broken play, and it was his only catch of the game. I've come to the conclusion that James Washington isn't open very often. I'm sorry. I can't come to any
He
other
was only
conclusion.
targeted 3 times.
I just can't. I mean, the last 3 games, he's had one catch, no catches, and last night, one catch again. And limited targets. This could be really problematic. You saw an opening drive there what Claypool can do for this team. He's a guy you saw against Tre'Davious White again in Buffalo. What he can do, he can make
But he
those
hasn't
plays.
done it enough. He hasn't done it enough, though.
Well, yeah, but you still want him in there with
No,
the
I'm not
opportunities
saying I
to do
don't
it.
want him in there. I'm just saying, to me, he would be more on the disappointing side than the positive side.
No, clearly.
this year.
But I'm saying if he's out, you don't have.
No.
Then who else does it?
No,
Who
you're
else
down
gives you any
Juju, yeah.
opportunity?
Cody White? I mean, no.
That would be a major
it's a
injury.
potential big loss.
How big?
Real big. I mean, I think Deontay Johnson, I've said all along, I think he's their best receiver. But, I mean, Claypool and Juju, I mean, they're big play guys. And Washington, like as you point out, his production has been way down.
Yeah, I think it would be major because Claypool gives them something that nobody else does, and that's that big play, beat you over the top, 50-50 ball ability, you know?
It sounded, a little foreboding the way Tomlin described it, an MRI on his toe today as we speak. Hopefully it won't be a problem. But we've seen toe injuries be problems.
If he's getting an MRI, then they're concerned,
especially
obviously.
for guys who's got to plant and cut with their feet.
And I would agree that Claypool, I wanted more from. On the other hand, he did have that big catch in Buffalo. He did have 9 catches for 96 yards against Cincy and 5 for 130 against Denver and made the big play on the touchdown drive last night that got him off to a nice start. He gives you something that they can't replace. So hopefully for their sake.
Hopefully it's not a bad situation.
Yeah. O-line, I liked what Tomlin said there. He basically said we took a step back. What else could he say?
Yeah.
I mean, he could have sugarcoated it, but he said we took a step
They
back.
took a step back, and he said with young guys, he's not totally surprised by that. Everybody, including me, wants the straight line development, get better every week, but it doesn't always go that way. Sometimes there's dips. And last night I thought was a pretty significant dip.
Presley Harvin, he talked about at the end, saying I've been largely pleased with his performance, and then talked about him as a holder and said he liked what he's done. In terms of punting, a little bit more consistency is what he wants to see. And, man, they better. I mean, that could have been disastrous last night. How do you – I don't know that I've ever seen that before. A punter goes to kick and his kicking leg drags in the ground? That was weird.
Yeah. And then he did I love this description of Boswell. He runs towards the big moments, not away from them. I thought that was a pretty good description of him.
It was.
The guy had one bad year. I mean, you could argue that he made the one year he got him to the playoffs virtually as much as you can single-handedly. And then the next year you can argue he kept them out of the playoffs virtually single-handedly. I still don't know what happened to him that year because, man, it looks like it's a real outlier, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that missed extra point, I think we'd be talking about if they lose by 1,
Yeah.
I think that was bad. But, yes, he hits 2 over 50. He's been really good. I'm to the point where when he wants to go for those 50-plus,
You just
normally
write 'em
I'd be like, what are you doing? But now his track record is such that you take him.
Well, Cam last night was pretty good. He called him, a serial killer, basically said the same thing Tomlin does, and then talked about how everybody said Justin Tucker in Baltimore is the best kicker. He goes, well, he may be 1A, but Boswell's 1B if that's the case.
Got an interesting tweet from a listener saying, is it okay to feel guilty as a Steeler fan today? And I'm wondering if people have that feeling. Do you feel like your team got away with one? I think I would. Things tend to even out over time. Steelers have gotten the short end of the stick in some games, but last night I thought the officiating went a long way toward helping the Steelers win that game.
Yeah, but if I'm a fan, I'm never feeling bad about that. I take it,
Yeah.
And, Tomlin talked again. He's on the competition committee, and he said, We're role models for young people. We're trying to clean the game up in terms of taunting. Again, I just did not think that was.
Role models for young people?
That's what he said. Yes, he said
Yeah,
we
I
know
heard him. Yeah.
people in a younger, lower levels are looking us how we act, and we don't want to be, taunting people. But that was not a taunt last night. I did not see that.
Yeah, I'm not buying that one. You know, what about the children type excuse, right? I mean,
Oh, I'm buying it totally because I think it's true.
you think that's his motivation?
I think that's
Yeah.
part of it. I
He
think
had Antonio Brown on his team. Antonio Brown quit, and if people hadn't on the Steelers hadn't told
he
media
also-
members about him, he would have put him out there for a playoff
he
game. How's that
also-
for a role model?
He also used. I mean, he let him take excessive celebration penalties. Maybe that's some of the things he's trying to clean. I do think young kids look up to these guys, and if they see him act like jerks, it's a lot easier for them to act.
Is this
like
good
jerks
for the
too.
game? Is this taunting rule good for the game?
I think it is generally. I didn't like last night's call.
I've seen several that have decided games that were ridiculous calls. They're completely subjective. There was one in a Kansas City Giants game where the fullback for the Giants just looked at a guy and it was called. I can't see how this is good for the game. Last night could have again impacted a game
It did impact
greatly.
the game last night. It did.
Yeah, it did.
It
It did
did.
impact the game.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it,
And
it
I didn't
could,
like
could
it.
impact the playoff race.
I think your point about lack of consistency is a pretty good one. Either call it or don't call it. But I mean, I get what they're trying to eliminate, the blatant stuff, and sometimes they just go overboard with it. But I think these officials are told, call it versus don't call it. They'd rather have them call it and have it be controversial than not calling it and be controversial.
I wonder if they would rather have that if it gets called in the Super Bowl. Would you want to play like that, an incident like that, to decide the
No.
Super Bowl?
No.
I think this is a disaster. There's been 26 of these things called this season, and almost every single one that I see has been not even questionable. It's just like, what are you doing? That you're on national television. That's what you want people to be talking about the next day? Is Cassius Marsh from probably a quarter of the field away looking at the Steelers bench, not even saying anything, and you throw a flag on that, and the motivation for this was because we're role models? That's why
No, Joe, I think that's part of
the
it.
players don't want it.
Well, that's fine. They got to learn to adjust to it. I'm not saying that's the total
Adjust to what? There's no consistency.
because you have to
Adjust to what?
As Tomlin said, you talk to your players about this. I'm not saying that's the primary motivation. They want to clean the game up. They see these
Did
guys
the game
acting
need
like
cleaning up?
jerks sometimes, and they want to try to eliminate that. I'd like it to be more consistent too, and I didn't like the call last night.
But
I
does the
get
game need
motivation
cleaning up
behind
in
it.
that?
What's that?
And does the game? Well, here's who doesn't want it: the players, who are the game, and the fans. So
you
who
know what?
does?
So screw the players. I mean, they got to adjust.
What about
to the
the fans? What do you mean screw the players? The NFL lied and said the players were in on this, that they were part of this, and then Jake Treader, who's the NFLPA
I have no
president.
problem trying to eliminate the.
Well, wait a second.
The
No. Wait
part
a
of
second.
this.
Wait a second. They lied and said the players were part of this. That needs to be collectively bargained, does it not? Or can the league just impose it
I guess the league can just impose it.
and then lie about whether the players wanted it? So who cares if the players want a rules crackdown or not? What about the
If
fans?
you're doing it for what you think is the better of the game, I have no problem with it. It's like helmet to helmet hits. Do you think most players, defensive players, still think it should be okay?
Helmet to helmet? Probably, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they still think it's okay. It's football, right? But is it good to try to eliminate that? I think so.
Yes.
The players don't like it.
I do. I think that's good for the game.
But the players
this
don't
isn't
like
good
it.
for the game.
The players don't like it, though.
Didn't they collectively bargain some of that?
I don't know about that.
I think that's good for the game. I don't think this is good for the game.
Well,
what
we
about
can-
all the fans?
We can agree to disagree.
What do you think is good about it for the game?
Because I don't like that actions. I don't like showboating and taunting the other team. I don't like it. I don't like pointing the ball in
Did you
somebody's
consider
face.
that last night to be showboating or taunting?
What did I say? What did I say? I
How
said
about,
I didn't
how about
like
the
the
other
call
ones?
last
How about
night.
the other ones that have
I
happened?
haven't seen any other ones this year that I've really.
Well, there's
paid
been
attention
26, and if you look at them, you should check the clips and form an opinion. I mean, they've been ridiculous. I don't see how the game is better for this. It's worse. And if the rationale that Mike Tomlin's putting forth is we want to be role models, who cares? Nobody wants this except the competition committee. And I'm trying to figure out why They want this.
Well, we can agree to disagree because I have no problem with it. Generally, the thought process behind it did not like the call last night.
So you want them to stay vigilant on this
yes, I
supposed
do. But
taunting,
I'd like them to
even though they're screwing it up every
week. I'd like
week.
to be a little more consistent with it, yes.
How do you be consistent? What's taunting?
That's a subjective thing, I guess.
That's the problem,
It
right?
is a problem.
So
But
how
I
can
think
you
the
possibly...
league is behind telling these officials, if it's a questionable thing, call it.
And they're not, because I see
some
things...
of them are. They did last night.
They sure did. I see things every single week. Guys turning to the bench, defensive backs in particular, after making a play, not called. I mentioned Ray McLeod spiking the ball on the Bears sidelines last night, not called. To me, this is like putting interference to replay.
Just let anything go.
No,
Showboat,
we all know what
stick the ball in a guy's face.
No, we all
know
what blatant taunting looks like.
Okay.
It's standing over a guy and pointing in his face.
Right.
They're doing a horrible job of adjudicating
so let everything go and
no,
don't worry about it because the fans would love it. The fans would love it.
Call the most obvious taunting. We all know what it was.
Well, it's obvious.
It wasn't
some
a problem.
Are obvious to you, not necessarily to them.
It was. They stink. The referees, just like Tony Correni last night.
The one last night was bad. I can't.
Have you seen any others? How can you comment if you haven't seen the others?
I have not seen any. I've seen some of them.
See some of them.
Joe, I'm at the game. I don't get to see the replays.
Go to the internet. Look them up.
I don't know how to use the internet. You know that.
No, I'll send you some clips. I think. You don't think this
then
is...
just let it all go.
No,
if that's what the fans want,
completely not what I'm saying.
You think the fans would want that?
Completely not what I'm saying.
You think the fans would want that? Let anything go.
No.
Okay.
No, that's completely not what I'm saying.
Okay.
We all know it's in the rules already. I just didn't see a problem with taunting in the NFL. I didn't see that. Plus, would you disagree that this is gearing toward a huge moment like the game last night? In a playoff game,
maybe
you can't adjudicate it because you can't define it.
I thought last year wherever they put the head down, leading with the head would be a big problem, and it was for a couple weeks, and then it wasn't.
Right.
So maybe this one won't be either. I don't know. In a Super Bowl, they call that penalty last night.
Then why call it in games that can lead, that can form your playoff field, which leads to the Super Bowl?
You don't listen to me. I said it was a bad call last night.
Yeah.
I don't call it last night. I don't call it in the playoff game. Other ones I'll call if I see it and I think it's demeaning to the opponent.
And I'm telling you that they're doing a bad job. So until you see the clips, you won't know.
Okay.
412-928-9370. Your thoughts on the taunting call last night and taunting in general, and Mike Tomlin's explanation for taunting being that that we're role models, he says, in the NFL, and we don't want younger players, college players, high school, mimicking some of the stuff they see in the NFL. 928-9370. Listen to Cook and Joe every Wednesday to hear about Starkey's Card of the Week from the Baseball Card Castle in Cranberry. Contests run every Wednesday through Friday at noon at the 937thefan.com contesting page.